Paulie with HardDrive Radio. We're in the studio with Fire from the Gods talking about their new album, American Sun. It's out now. Tell me when you guys started the work on this one. How long have you been writing the songs for it?
Oof. I mean, a few of the songs that are on the record we've been dialing in over, the past tours and maybe like 1 or 2 years. But really, I mean, we dove in at the beginning of the year and had like a few weeks of pre-production. And then we went out to the studio and really just dialed everything in there that we had. So we took a handful of, a bunch of songs in and just kept listening, and kind of seeing where the vibes are going throughout the process. And that's pretty much.
It was like over time, like some of the lyrics for this on this record, like I've had, in songbooks for ages, on 1 or 2 of the songs. But some of the songs like Right Now, that was like a studio song, that happened like one day, and like Make You Feel It, that happened in like 20 minutes, what I'm saying? Stuff like that. So it was just a culmination, but everything, the meat and potatoes of the record really did come together in the studio, which was over a span of about 2 months in LA.
And I think, Richie, you were telling me last night there's one of the songs on there that you guys have been kind of like tweaking for years, and it's finally made it. It's finally in the form that it is.
Break the Cycle.
Yeah.
I remember Jameson and I, were sitting at his old apartment, and
that was like 2015.
Yeah,
it was
wow, that's right. I forgot about that.
And we were like, man, I just remember him playing that clean guitar part, and just being like, man, that's really good. And so we just kind of we recorded it, and then we had a version for a while, and that song it was kind of just stagnant in floating in the ether,
But J-Mo he was still in a band called Fear and Wonder while he joined Fire from the Gods, and I think that was gonna be a Fear song, right?
Yeah, we tried it, but they butchered it.
Then I heard it, like our collaborator, one of our main collaborators, a kid called Robbie in Houston. I heard it. He's like, "Oh, we had this ballad that was gonna be a Fear and Wonder song," and I heard it. I was like, "Yo, this is ours." Like I am with a lot of things. I'm like, "That's Fire's. We're taking that."
It comes back because like we were going through pre-production since way back in the day, just like going like, "What? You remember that one thing we had? You remember the date on that? That's what we had to go off of. What was the name? What was the name of it? We just have terrible names for these things."
Yeah, the working titles are the worst,
I always find working titles to be very funny because it's always like the most random crap. Like, what's the worst working title for a song you guys have come up with?
Shit Doobie.
Shit Doobie. I was gonna say that. Shit Doobie. And I don't even know where that came from, man. Because I wasn't there when you guys wrote that, but I just loved it. I was like, yeah, Shit Doobie, because I thought about like a shit doobie, like it's a bad.
It literally
bad
goes
weed,
off of like, okay, what are we gonna call this work? And they're like, if somebody just says the first thing, that's what it's gonna be.
Yeah.
That's what it's gonna be.
Into Space is a cool one. I don't know if some of the working titles, like, did any work into
Out of Line was Raw Sauce.
Is She Hot?
Yeah.
Is She Hot?
Is She Hot?
That
one, yeah.
That's we've been working on that one for years too.
Oh, wow.
Maybe that'll be a song
in
in the future. Is She Hot? Yeah.
Is She Hot?
There's
Is
all
She
sorts
Hot?
of like funny working titles, man.
Yeah, we got some bad ones. Some we won't say on the air.
Yeah, well, not everyone's a winner. But.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Let's actually talk about a couple of the songs, and let's start with the single that we're playing right now on Hard Drive. It's called Right Now. It's blowing up for you guys. It's doing really, really well.
Yeah.
Tell me, specifically, and it's not what the song is about, but I'm looking more for an anecdote about like what was going on in your heads when you guys were creating this one, or if there was a situation in the studio that you were drawn from.
Oh man, yeah, that's a good story, that one, because when I had Eric Ron and I, the producer, had worked on the first original version of that before the guys had heard it and then put, their spin and their touch on it. But I had that, that melody, the how can I relate. I typically, when I lived in my old apartment, I would go to my daughter's room where she was, because she was a tiny baby at the time. So I would go in there and I would record voice notes, and I had that, how can I relate on, and I was trying to record that. I was like, man, this is tight, and then I took it with me to California when I met Eric Ron, who eventually worked and produced the record with us. And I was like, dude, I have this vocal melody. He was like, what are we going to work on? Because I'd been there one other time, just myself. And he was like, what are we going to work on? And I was like, well, I've got this vocal melody. And I saw it one way. I was like, I want to start, and I had this like whole like weird 9 Inch Nails type arrangement, and I wanted it real dark. And he was like, no. I hear something way different. And I was like, nah. Let's keep it super heavy and dark, and gothy, because I'm feeling all busted up inside, And he's like, all right, well. Then he started playing that riff, man. He wrote that riff like super quick. And I was like, yo, this is banging, man. And he was like, let's go with it. Let's keep going with it. And so we did the first verse, and we didn't have the hook or the chorus at that point. And I left the studio and went out and hung out with a bunch of like bandmates and friends, from other bands. And we were in LA, so we went to a show that night, went out, hung out way late, So and then I had a meeting with 10th Street the next day, who's now our management company, because we hadn't really signed at the time, but we were still transitioning in between from Rise to the label. So I went and met them and was up all night. But in the back of my head, I was still holding on to a lot of personal issues that were going on back home. But I knew I had to go out and meet Eric Ron, because he had just come off of this, the success with Bulletproof and Godsmack. So I was like, this is the opportunity. This is the only time he has to have like a writing session. So I went out there. So I was dealing with whatever personal shit I was dealing with at home, but then also on the fact that I went and kind of took out my frustration out on the bottle. I hit the booze super hard that night, and then we just had that hook, and I was like, you know what, man, next time I come out, we'll work on it. He's like, nah, don't be a bitch. Get in the booth and let's do this. I'm like, nah, man, I'm tired, bro. I can't do it, and I'm hurting, and I was like, man, something just really fucked up happened back home. I don't know, man. He was like, bro, come on. He's got a lot of experience, so he has this real subtle way of kind of saying like, don't be a bitch. But, producers have that after they've worked with like so many different artists over time. So he was like, get in the booth, man. And we just kept going, plugging away. And then, the main hook, the tear down these walls, just out of nowhere, just kind of came out, man. And you can hear it in the second verse, how it starts, and there's a little crack in my voice, and that's just like this real like painful moment, I'm like thinking about it, and we went with it. That was like the first take, and we've gone with that, that became, because he's got an incredible facility and great gear, so he was like, yo, you did it here, no reason to do it again when we came back to LA. And that song is just kind of developed, and I think it's probably the most, for lack of a better way of putting it, formulaic song on the record, where it has, the verse, chorus, standard for radio. But that was never the intention. It was always just like, let's put as much emotion as we can into our music. And that's what we've done, and that's what Fire does. And I think that translates into everything. So the Right Now situation kind of is like a culmination of all the feelings and just everything I was going through. And then you want to express your feelings for what's going on in the world today. So, and I'm constantly thinking about that always, and something will trigger something that in me. And that's what happened, during Right Now, and we were just like, yeah, let's vibe with this. Let's keep going with the unifying theme of the song and getting behind, looking after each other. And Eric Ron had a lot to do with that. And then when the guys came into the studio and kind of Richie and like Jameson and Drew and those guys, they take it to the next level with what they apply as far as their parts.
Because what Eric and you did, it really represented who we were musically as a band too, because it had a groove going, the riff was dope and fresh, and it was too easy to take to the finish line. And that's how it's like, this is the producer, because he's already in our vibe. So it was really he caught on real early, man. That was he's so we in the same headspace,
Yeah,
so
exactly. Good point, man.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing that I've found fascinating about producers. They have a very difficult job in that they're being hired to, tell people when they put out crap. They have to be forceful about it, but in a way that you're not an asshole at the same time. And it's like not everyone can do it. So the people that you can vibe with and they have those skills, it's like a rare treasure, man. I'm sure.
For sure, yeah.
Tell me about the title track for the album, American Sun.
So American Sun is my way of, and the play on words, and with the son as not being the child, but being that we are Americans, and we are American sons, so to speak. We are the future, of America, and the son being a child, and the children are our future. But the sun, as in the celestial body, the sun, represents a bright new day, represents a dawning of a new time. So if we as a people are going to stand up to the creed of who we are as this cultural leader and this global leader, let's finally stand up to it, and let's realize the full manifestation of the American sun. So it's kind of a reimagining of the American dream. And that's why, the lyrics in that song, I am a refugee. I am, and not specifically because yes, it's a political hot, buzzword right now, the word refugee, but we are all refugees running away from something. And then when someone, when immigration in America, someone's running away from wherever they've come from, and most times it's from a situation that wasn't conducive to a healthy life, you know what I mean, or a good life. So they've come and they're trying to bask in this American sun. And so it's a dawning of a new day. It's looking forward to the future and basking as so to speak, in the light of a new American sun.
Tell me about the moment you guys are sitting down, you're thinking about titles for the album, and you're like, this is the one. How did that happen?
Brainstorming, right?
Yeah,
I feel like a lot of it's just like AJ takes control of a lot of it, but sometimes he's really hard on himself. Yeah. So all he needs sometimes, like whenever he comes to us, he'll be like, what should I do this? What should I do this? And all he needs is just to tell it to somebody. And then I can just literally sit there and just be like, sounds like you got it figured out. He's like, yeah, I just needed to hear myself say that, I guess.
Yeah.
So,
with Excuse Me, man. With Excuse Me, I was like, what do we call this song? And then Jim was like, yo, what about Excuse Me? And I was like, that's fucking cool. Yeah. But sometimes, it's like, you need that validation sometimes, especially as an artist. And, but I wanted to call the record,
Cut through the noise.
Cut through the noise.
Yeah.
Cut through the noise. Yeah, we were sitting on that. But Zoe from Five Finger, man, he was just like, yo, when he first heard, he came out to Texas and with us when we were doing pre-production, and our small little studio space that we have back in Houston where Richie works out of a lot. And he was like, man, this song is sick, He was like, this is a banger. And he was like, this is the song, this is the one. And we're like, he's like, American Son. And so he had kind of had that in his brain for a while. And he's an incredibly gifted musician and artist, and he knows the business. So he was like, man, American Son, go with that theme. And we've just kind of ran with it.
So when I was listening to the album, I was enjoying the hell out of it, but I did notice a guest on the album, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about working, and then tell us who it is.
So we didn't know if we were gonna have like a feature on the record, but one popped up, and thankfully our management, JoJo, she had a relationship with Sonny because she had worked with POD forever. And she was like, dude, Sonny loves you guys. And we've
been on tour with them too, so there was like already
exactly
some sort
the
vibe and relationship.
So, on the tour, when POD took us out with the Alien Ant Farm, Sonny and I like kind of kicked it a lot, man. And I knew that he had like reggae vibes and background because POD has a ton of that in their music, but I didn't know how much he knew about reggae and how deep into it. And so we just started going on, man, and talking about Jamaican culture, and like the dudes in POD were all about Jamaican food. And we had this song, They Don't Like It, and I was like, man, I'm gonna write something that Sonny can vibe off of with a reggae sort of vibe, but still keep it very Fire from the Gods-esque. And so the dude jumped on the track and absolutely murdered it, man. We wanted to have Ivan, but maybe sometime down the road we can do something with Ivan. But Sonny came in and just actually smashed it, man.
Yeah, I mean those guys are total pros, and they've just been killing it for years. So like hearing Sonny on the track was like just
he's an OG, man. He knows what's up, man.
Yeah. That was another one that was like just quick in like a day. We were like,
that's a studio song for sure.
Just grab the guitar, and there came a riff out, and then it just like happened.
It's like magic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same thing with like Excuse Me. Excuse Me was like,
Yeah.
I feel like we didn't give any attention to it. It just flowed and it worked. And then
That was a 2 a.m.
Yeah, and
2 a.m. track. Last song. We had to have another song for that record.
Come time to like pick the singles, they were like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna do this," and we're like, we spent like 3 hours on that song. What are you talking about? They're like, "No, that one's." We're like, "All right, so take it, man."
What was the difference in like maybe just approach or mood or anything in the studio for recording American Sun compared to, you know, Narrative? What did you guys do differently between those two albums?
We had more time.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Narrative was a it was just like wham bam, thank you ma'am, you know, like
Bendith.
Yeah, and we worked with a heavy hitter and David Bendith, man, you know, he's Breaking Benjamin, Bring Me the Horizon, you know, tons of big names, and we were just this little guy, and he had the time, so we spent the holidays here in New York and recording that record. But over with American Sun, you know, we've had countless hours and time on the road, and we've matured so much as musicians and as artists, you know, and individuals, you know. So American Sun really was just the time and the attention we were able to give, and I think it really translates very well when you hear the music, you know, and you can hear the rushed bits of Narrative. You can hear where it was like a little rough, you know. It's like, ooh, we listen back and I'm like, damn, I wish I had more time to work on that, but you know,
musically
we did
in a different headspace too.
Yeah,
I think.
for sure.
Like, we're all just more, you know, focused on kind of, I don't know, we're all more aggressive, and we're, you know, in a
Hungry.
Heavier vibe and hungry. Yeah.
We're just a lot hungrier now, you know, too. You know, we were starving then, but we're still hungry now, you know.
But in a good way. Like,
yeah, exactly. Oh, very much so.
I wonder, you know, talking about, you know, taking one last swing of making a band work, you know, was that the kind of attitude you guys had in your head when you were recording Narrative? Like, okay, we're going to give this one more go. And now, like, with the success that you've had, you're kind of like trying to keep it real, you know, like make it a real thing.
I personally really didn't have that feeling going on because of the stress of like, well, we have to get this done now.
Exactly.
So there really wasn't time to think about like,
anything
oh God,
else.
this is our last, like, no, because I think we were kind of like, that was probably a few years prior where we were like, okay, this is our last thing, let's go. But when we were in the zone to writing that one, I mean, I remember like we had a week just for the music to like, because you were still in New York, and we were constantly on the phone and just like, okay, what are you vibing? And then we just hit the studio right away. Like, we were just at the studio for a week straight and just wrote pretty much all of the instrumentals in that week, and then
Pretty much,
showed up and
they did a ton of work in Texas on that record before we got into the studio with David Bendith, but the bulk of that record was really done in like a week and a half.
But like it's night and day compared to Narrative and American Sun.
But American
like
Sun, man, we stayed there at the studio. Like Eric Ron's got a fantastic space, you know, and it can accommodate a band. So we were kind of like living in the work environment, and it just way more conducive to kind of writing a more successful effort and putting a more successful effort into what your work. And so we had the time, man. It was, and you know, we were able to nurture it and deal with, you know, every night we had some sort of, not argument, but we had some sort of spat where we would basically kind of discuss the day's work, you know, and just go over and over, and then it would just descend into chaos once we started, you know, drinking more. But once the White Claws hit, but you know, it was a good experience, great experience for the band, and we were all there together, you know. And Narrative, we were all over the place, and we had to send files here, and you know, send music there, and get on the phone, like Richie said. But we were all together, and we really like put the fist down and put pen to paper and made it happen.
Even that short amount of time we did with Jonathan Davis, like,
oh
you
yeah,
know,
comparing
that to Narrative, doing Narrative with Bendith and Eric Ron, it's all been like three different things, and it's been fun.
Yeah, we spent 4 days with JD at his spot in Bakersfield, and you know, that was extreme. Another very accommodating, you know, environment, and we kind of took that same vibe into, I guess the dudes in California are just way cooler, man. When it comes to
Let's just vibe,
We
dude.
like
Let's just
it.
vibe.
Yeah. out there, yeah.
Because JD
Good
was just like
vibes.
hanging out with us all day, you know, like he was there the whole day and he was just kicking it until like 2 a.m. telling us like, you know, war stories from the business and shit. And we're just like, you know, like carry on, please, you know. And then we'd record, you know. So it was cool, man. And working with Eric on American Son was very cool and very, very, very straightforward, man.
Really good vibes.
Yeah, very good vibes, man.
And, you know, we as fans now, we get to enjoy the fruits of your labor. So thank you very
Yes.
much for that, because it's a really great album. I've been enjoying the hell out of it. I'm sure your fans are enjoying it too. And you guys are, you know, you're on the road now. You're playing new songs for everybody.
Yeah,
So tell us a
yeah.
little bit about the tour and then what you got coming up.
Yeah, we're out here with Five Finger Death Punch, 3 Days Grace, and Bad Wolves. You know, it's like a giant family tour at this point.
Yeah, man.
They've-
I mean,
they've
those
really
dudes
taken
love us,
in.
man. And the Five Finger guys, you know, from we did our first bit of touring with those guys over the summer, and day one, you know, it was just like, yo, anything you need, we got you. You know, Ivan's like, dude, you know, I've known Ivan for a while, man, and from his motor-grader days, you know, so. Yeah. And I was like I was real young, man, when he was doing that. And so, you know, he showed mad love, man. And he's like, dude, you deserve this. He's like, if anyone deserves this, bro, you deserve this. Keep going, keep fighting, you know. So they've got our back big style, man. And Doc and Tommy have been like my big homies in the business as well for a long time. You know, I've known those dudes for a while. So it's like Richie said, it's super family oriented, like, and it's a dream come true, so to speak.
Those guys are really welcoming. Like day one was just like anything you need. We're like, really? Like,
Yeah, right?
Like, gosh, man, they're so
Have you
nice.
tested it so far? You like asked for like
Dude,
really weird shit?
Ivan came up to Drew, our guitar player, and was like, "Hey, you're a Cowboys fan," because he always wears a Cowboys jersey, and he was gonna give them the Lombardi Trophy.
Yeah,
to
yeah,
him,
that's what
like that was
he's like,
signed
yeah.
by Emmett Smith, right?
He's like, I hate the Cowboys.
yeah, he's like, I hate the Cowboys.
Yeah,
he's
so
like,
he's like,
he
I'm
got
gonna
it.
give
He
you
got
this
it
trophy,
from.
dude.
He got it from Vinnie Paul. And he's just like, he gave it to me as a gift, and he's like, and I hate the Cowboys. And
Yeah,
he's a Raider fan. He's a Raider fan, right?
I think so, or Colts or something like that.
Something like that, yeah. And he's like, I'd rather have a Cowboy fan that would appreciate it.
That's incredible.
And so
Yeah.
Drew's like, you're screwing with me. What? Something's not right here. And he's like,
I'm
no, I
more
want
than
you to have
certain
it.
he's getting that trophy.
Yeah,
you know?
so
Yeah, 'cause
that's an example of what, you know, how welcoming and how awesome those guys are to us.
like
you
a
know?
box of like this food and shit, you know, like
Yeah,
we,
yeah.
you know,
He's
they're
like,
just-
oh, I'm not gonna
eat all
Hey,
this. So
Richie,
here,
come
bang.
follow me. I'm never gonna take any of this food or these drinks with me, so go for it. And you know, we're grateful.
And we're
for
the
all
only
of
band. We're like the only band on the tour that drinks. So, you know, we get all the love there. You know what I'm saying?
More for
White
you. That's
Claws.
awesome.
Yeah.
White Claw Central, man.
The album is American Son. The band is Fire from the Gods. Gentlemen, thank you so much. This was a blast.
Thanks
Cheers,
for
man. Thank you,
listening.
thank you.
Thanks for having us.
You got it.
Peace.